Good morning, lovely people. I'm Tracy and I'm a 12-stepper working on her recovery. Thank you so much for those who gave some feedback to last week's service. It was really encouraging and lovely to read when I felt really nervous and vulnerable doing it. So I've stepped out and done another one. And I thought might be helpful going forward to maybe have each of the services on a different step of the 12 steps with a share on each one. And seeing as we're always reworking the steps. So I'm going to start with step 1. But this week I recorded a morning and evening prayer for YouTube, and you can access them if that's helpful. But they are both a bit reflective, holding before our higher power the things that have happened and the things which are to come. So I thought we could do something a little bit similar this morning as we do our sort of thank you and confess. So quieten your mind from a busy week, whether that be a physical, spiritual or emotionally busy week. You might even find it helpful to close your eyes, but that's not compulsory. So spend a few moments bringing to mind those things which gave you life this week, the positive experiences and encounters, and give thanks to God. And we'll hold a moment of quiet. Now, what have been the challenges and the tough times, the temptations you've experienced this week? How did all that make you feel? Let's hand those things over to God as well in a time of quiet. Where have there been times this week when you have messed up? When you've been selfish, when you've hurt others, when you've not taken opportunities to serve others? And we bring those to mind. And as we do so, we say sorry. I thought to finish this section of the service, we could say the first step prayer together. If you're not familiar with it, I wasn't either until this week, but it should appear on the screen. And you'll see you'll need to say your name at the right time and also declare your primary addiction, or simply just say real addict. So we say together, God, creative intelligence, universal mind, spirit of nature or spirit of the universe. My name is Tracy, and I am a real addict, and I need your help today. For our reading this week, I've chosen just a few verses from a book of Romans, chapter 7. And the first bit is a bit of a tongue twister, so I hope that I get to say it right. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. What a miserable person I am. Who will rescue me from this body that is doomed to die? Thank God, Jesus Christ will rescue me. Well, in step 1, we admit that we are powerless over our addiction and that our lives have become unmanageable. Well, I'm a self-confessed control freak. I like things done in a certain way, and I don't like asking for help. So step 1 was quite a challenge before I started. It's also taken me a long time to accept in my heart as well as my head that I'm not able to control my eating by myself. I kept holding on to that if I could just find a bit more self-control, I can do this. How hard can it be? I am, after all, a competent, hard-working woman who has overcome many things in life and achieved more than anyone would have expected. So how come then I can't control my eating? I'm also not great at accessing my sponsor. And this is not because my sponsor's no good, but it's tied up with the control thing and not wanting to ask for help. In my warped, insane addiction head, this would mean weakness or failure. It isn't, but that's how our insanity works. In the Big Book, this is described in the following analogy. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. He's forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wishes, the show would be great. Does that resonate with you? If only other people would do what we need them to do, we'd be okay. And everything else would be okay. The Big Book talks about us needing to quit playing God and allow God to be the director instead. And that's easier said than done, I know. But I'm learning how essential that is. The second part of step 1 says, we acknowledge that our lives are unmanageable. Well, as a control freak, I do not do unmanageable. I find a way to make things manageable. And as I've been working the steps, I've started to accept this more. But there is still a little part of me that struggles with this concept. Surely, if I just try a little harder, it won't be unmanageable. But this is a disease. It's not purely about self-will. So I've read some really good books recently, and one of them is a book by Richard Rohr called Breathing Underwater, and it's all about spirituality and addiction. And he says this, until you bottom out and come to the limits of your own fuel supply, there is no reason for you to switch to a higher octane of fuel. In other words, it's often only when we hit rock bottom that we realise properly that we can't do this alone. He goes on to suggest that if we try to change by ourselves, it's not transformation that we get, it's just a better disguised ego. Rock bottom gives us a new perspective. From the bottom, we can only look upwards. Rock bottom also gives us the perspective that we clearly cannot do this alone, because look where doing it alone has gotten us. I love the few verses that we heard from the book of Romans, and I must have read them in the past, but reading them through the lenses of addiction gives them a whole new meaning. Let me read that first one again. I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. Doesn't that just sum up our heads sometimes in the throes of addiction? We do not know why we do what we do, we just can't stop it. Albert Einstein apparently once said, no problem can be solved by the same consciousness that caused the problem in the first place. We can't solve our problem by willpower and desire, as they are the things that got us here in the first place. We have to access a higher power greater than ourselves. Step 1 has reminded me of a number of characters in the Bible who also had to hit rock bottom in order to have their lives turn round. And last week we talked about the prodigal son story. And there are loads of similar stories in the Bible. And I also love the fact that Jesus didn't choose the most qualified and together people to be his friends and his disciples. He chose a ragamuffin bunch he knew would mess up more than once. A bit like me. In the last verse, we heard earlier that we are told that we have a way out. We have a rescuer. For me, this is Jesus. For some of you, your higher power might mean something completely different. But we know that we are not on our own in this. We have each other, and we have a higher power willing us on and sitting with us when we reach rock bottom, holding our hand, and even maybe cleaning up our vomit. Thanks for listening. As we did last week, we're also going to have a time to think about other people, to hold them before our higher power. And so if you'd like, in a moment now, to bring to mind those names or folk or situations that are on your heart at the moment, people you're really worried about maybe, it might even be fellow addicts. And in a moment of quiet, we're going to offer those to God and ask him to take those on. We're going to close our service by saying the Serenity Prayer, but we're going to say the longer version. Now, I've known that short version for a long time and always felt, to be honest, that it was a bit cheesy when I was younger because you found it in gift shops on tea towels and plates and tat. But in the last year, it has come to mean so much. This longer version I only come across recently, but it does go on to talk about the one day at a time and trusting in our higher power. So we're going to say together, and it should come on your screen. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right. If I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. So thank you for joining me today in this service, and God bless you in the week ahead, and maybe see you soon. Bye.